this meeting also. So sure. So I'm Holly Wall, Town Administrator.
I am Charlie Fink, I'm Chair of the Walkway Community Board. Nice to see you. Councilor Greg Morris, here for the Kellums Complex.
Okay. Sure.
Laura Blackwelder, member of the Walkway Committee.
Charlie.
Just you.
I'm right down the street.
Madeline? Hello. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the purpose of this public engagement is to hear from residents on a couple projects that the town is working on right now. So we have released a form that can be completed. We've got a lot of great responses already, so thank you so much. But basically, we have some grant funding from the state of Maryland, specifically for 3 of these projects that I'll point out when we go through them. So we want to hear from citizens as to what they envision in these spaces. And then the goal from that would be have another meeting on around June 30th timeframe, where we would work on kind of conceptualizing from public feedback what the spaces would look like. So we would put that back out to the public again so that you could view it as well. And so the method of the public engagement is mainly through our online form, but you also can call into town hall and give us your feedback. You can come into town hall and fill one out in paper format as well. So we'll take your input however you would like to give it. You could also just submit a public comment with whatever you would like, and we will include that as well. So to start with some of these projects, we're going to start with the B Street Pocket Park and Overlook. So this has been identified in our feedback form. And basically, the town has purchased a parcel of land. It's at 7429 B Street. It's on the waterfront side above the boardwalk there. And I will zoom in on this. And the purpose of purchasing the lot was to make an overlook space for the public to enjoy. It was an abandoned lot with really just the foundation of a home. So there is a partial foundation that we could work with, as you can kind of see in this image here, but it overlooks the bay. And so the goal was to come into the space and create a sitting area or an area that would have an overlook feature that you could zoom in on the bay at a perch with also some seating. Right now, the space is fairly dangerous. We've contained it in terms of with fencing to keep it safe, but it does have a bit of a fall off. So we do want to address that. This project did receive grant funding. So we received $150,000 from the state of Maryland for 3 of these pocket parks, and this is one of the parks that received funding. So, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things is that we did with the walkable community is to try, and this is the pocket park concept, to try to find small spaces throughout the town where people might want to walk to. I mean, maybe you're not going to walk 3 miles all the way across town, but in that neighborhood, maybe you go out of an evening and take a stroll with your wife, with your dog, with your friends, and have a place to go sit. And that was part of our vision for making Chesapeake Beach a little more walkable. You'd have someplace to go. And they're scattered throughout so that it's not all hovering down here in the commercial area. It would be in different spaces.
Yes. So some of the questions that we had, first, we just asked citizens to rate how important this project is to them on a 1 through 5 scale. And then we asked what type of preferences you had in the space. So is there any particular comment is there any comment while you're here that you want to tell us about the space?
Does it make sense? Is it possible to even have like a write-in comment if somebody's had an idea that wasn't on the list?
Sure. So there is at the bottom, but I could add a write-in comment for each of the sections. Sure.
Also might have, I don't care about that particular thing. There was, I tried to submit, but when I didn't care about it, and I had to put some reply.
I see. As an option of what are your preferences. So if you select not important, you still have to select something. I see what you mean. Okay. Got it.
Do you have a summary of the results?
We will. So we're still collecting feedback. Yes. Yes. So the June 30th meeting, we're going to have the response form out until June 30th. And then at that time, we'll have a consolidated list of all the feedback. But I will definitely, I'm glad you mentioned these comments because I have time to incorporate that for the new submissions.
That's a nice place. One of those better be doing.
Yeah. And so the goal would be that residents could walk to it and enjoy it. Obviously, there's not an area really to park, and it wasn't really intended for parking. It's really for local residents that would walk to it and enjoy it, or walk through town to get to it.
So I was going to save this in, but I'll mention this real quick. One of the things that our committee has been working on is the notion of wayfaring, and we have artwork to generate what I would use the term cautiously branded signage across town to tie these things together. So Peggy, took the time to mention how we're trying to spread some of these things out. We also have this notion of creating markers that will guide people to these different places. So if you're in Kellums Field and you're on your bike or you're on foot, you'd be able to sort of know where to go and how to get to some of these different destinations. We'd like to see that expand. We're even coordinating with North Beach so that our branding, if not exactly matches theirs, will be close. So we're going to look at some of those examples here at the end as well.
So moving on to the next project, this is also another project that received a portion of that, the 1/3 of the $150,000 that we received from the state of Maryland. So that the town has a portion of land on the waterfront, basically at the end of 29th Street. And so the goal was for the Walkable Communities Advisory Group was to create a pocket park at this location as well. The town's vision here is for a park that allows an area to sit along the waterway and observe from bayfront areas of town.
Question, will that be the whole extension of the street, where it's going to be scenic, or you still have to, are you actually walking Signage Ideas,
Right.
So scenic can be actually where that whole street, like you said.
So the street, well, the asphalt would stay as it is. So it's really just that grass pocket area there that we're talking about. But we do have a section later in the meeting where we talk about a walkway to that would traverse 29th Street. Yes.
Not the one that's delineated now. So we'll
Yes.
talk more about that.
Correct. So some of the questions were similar for this. It is a very small space, but we're again asking, bench seating, covered seating, single chair seating. If you envision any kind of pad there, it is in the critical area, so we would have to look at that. But what are the features that you would like to see?
So would be another thing at the bottom, like withstand flooding.
Floatable park. Yeah, that has come up a lot in terms of how it will need to be resilient. Yes. Is there any more discussion on this location?
Well, I would just say that, Madeline, it's a good point, but I would tell you that anything that's that close to the water, of course, the one up on B Street's on a cliff, so that's kind of irrelevant, but anything is going to be flood resilient. I mean, that's part of the point. It's what the comprehensive plan talks about, and anything will be flood resilient that we put funds into. Yeah.
This is builds on that same project, but the 29th Street Bayfront Park Sidewalk Connector. So we realize that the space now notated for walking is far too narrow. I think that's one you're referring to, Madeline. Yes. So we are going to have a meeting with the new business there, Baya, and talk to them about what would be feasible for a sidewalk to bring people safely to the new pocket park. So there's been discussion of whatever is placed there, that it should be a different surface, whether it's like a hardscape surface, something that when you ride over with your car, you're going to realize that it's a walking area to hopefully slow people down, because there is some concerns that this is used for a lot of parking. And so we have to be careful with pedestrians. Is there any comment or feedback that you want us to take into account when we meet with the neighboring business?
Does the sidewalk go right through the parking lot?
Well, so what's been recommended so far is that if we were going to put a sidewalk in, that we place it as close to the business side as possible, and out of, to leave this area for cars to pull in. So the idea would be that it would likely stay parking, more of public parking, and then we would have a sidewalk closer to the building, taking you all the way to the park.
Parking on 29th Street is town parking. It's public. It's not for the restaurant specifically. The restaurant uses it, and fantastic, but it is a town street.
I'm sorry, if anyone connected virtually has any comments, please feel free to either use the raise hand option or just chime in.
Holly, isn't that currently used for overflow parking for the restaurants that have been there?
So there was a licensing agreement with a prior owner that did not transfer. So as it stands right now, that is public parking on 29th Street.
And who would be responsible for enforcement?
The town of Chesapeake Beach. Yes, definitely. People who are dining in the restaurant can absolutely park there, and so can anyone from the public.
I don't remember exactly how wide that is, but when you consider the angle of parking, that's easier to get in and out, or is everybody going to have to parallel park on the sidewalk?
Right now, it is at an angle. And so there isn't any proposed changes to that at the moment. But I think depending on what the sidewalk would look like, our engineer would make any proposed changes to the angle of the parking.
So we're talking as a hardscape surface, potentially cobblestones or something that people knew they were driving over than asphalt.
Yes.
That, by the way, in my vision, would also include color, some sort of coloring, like a brown or something that looks that has a visual aspect to it as well, as opposed to just a sidewalk. Are
there any other questions on this project?
No.
Okay. All right. Moving on. So the 29th Street to 30th Street sidewalk connector. So this is a alley in the town that has a portion that is unimproved. And the town is reviewing making a walkway within that unimproved section. So right now, this end of that alley is just grass. So we've been having conversations about making a pedestrian walkway so that residents, we have a lot of residents that appear to be kind of cutting through, and it's easier, especially when you're going to the local restaurants, to just use that back alley instead of having to go out to 261. Are there any comments on this particular project?
Good to me.
That would seem to make sense. Because unless I'm mistaken, the parking lot on the top side of this picture is for the high rise.
Yes, that's correct. And this parking lot here for Baycrest is fenced off as well. So there's no access through there. So this is kind of just opening up that more residential pedestrian access.
Yeah, it doesn't, sounds like a win-win to me. Is flooding an issue there?
Probably everywhere is an issue on occasion.
Except for Beach Street.
Flooding's an issue everywhere, but they're less so than, let's say, where the pocket park's going to go. So I spend a lot of time, a lot of people know this, Mr. White, I've not met you in person, but I spend a lot of time walking nooks and crannies of the town. And this is a stretch that I walk all the time. And when this new pocket park is in place, I think other people will too, because it's just more pleasant than walking on 261. And, to me, this just represents a way to get people more safely and more elegantly out to, in and out of the business space, in and out of the pocket park. It's really kind of well, you said it, it's a win-win. There is another project. We're not talking about it tonight because we're not ready to yet, but there is a real goal to connect, to build a connector from Horizons all the way to Seagate, which is right now along the wetlands. Basically you're taking your life in your hands when you walk there. Every now and then when I walk there, you can see tread marks where someone probably was texting and swerved and barely avoided driving into the wetland. And I take pictures of that and say, there goes another pedestrian. So we kind of, we see this as all part of an interconnected plan. And again, with our Wayfaring signage, we would direct people to these various parks and walkways. And this would be a big step in directing people to that side of the road to have a safe place to walk. So that's all.
Any of you my property right across Beach Street from me. And under the exposed concrete pad, there is a room down there. It's part of the basement structure. And because it's overgrown currently with kudzu, as it does every year, we probably have to find a way to close that off, or it could be troublesome.
Good point.
There is a street light, a few houses down at the intersection of Old Bayside and B. I don't know that street lights, other than shining into my bedroom windows, are going to be of much advantage. We probably should not be parking on site. Barely big enough to back the car out across the single lane Beach Street without hitting one of somebody's fence. As it is, when Frank Leniak owned the property, that was an issue too. Before it fell down on Riverstone. So it's nice that the town was looking for something to do with it by making it a point of interest. And obviously keep it from being developed because there is some concern about the stability of the site.
Yes. Thank you, Frank.
Sure.
Did you want to add
I'm
on?
going to assume it will be a dusk to dawn park.
Would the B Street? Yes. Like all of our other parks.
I'm actually kind of curious, maybe ask Mr. White, since you live directly across from it. We've talked about lighting in these parks one way or the other, even if they're dusk till dawn. And I can see where you don't want a big street light. How would you feel if the designs included low light, downcast lighting? And I'm thinking of it mostly from a safety perspective, so people can see their feet when they're walking.
If something was embedded in on the plan like a light under the rail, if you're gonna put a rail around the path, keep people from falling off, something like that, but yeah, it's gonna need to be indirect.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
And then we have the Kellums complex. So there's lots of conversations around Kellums. So we have this list of what we're asking you, which you think is the most important part of Kellums. We've received a lot of actually handwritten or typed responses along this line that we'll gather. Greg, I don't know if you wanted to add anything specific related to Kellums. Okay. Charlie, you good?
No, the connecting park is next, right? So it's
Yes.
not part of that, yeah.
Mhm. So I will just give one brief update on Kellums. So we do have the grant funding for the children's tot lot. We have a $100,000 grant. That right now, we are in the process of installing a drainage pipe underneath of Kellums Field. Right now, the tot lot is a sponge. So it's filled with so much water, and the water is actually coming from the ground. So we really have to relieve that water and address the storm drainage first. And then the plan is to go in and address the grading, and we have to create ADA accessible entrances. So we're going to have to increase the grade of the tot lot and then put a fencing around it with ADA ramps in some areas so that it can be accessible. So that is currently in the works, as well as the seniors activity area with the low impact workout equipment. So both of those things are still in the works. We do have grant funding for it. We just have to get a handle on the stormwater before we can start building that foundation. So
Can I go ahead, Madeline?
The new top lot will be on the same site as the old top lot?
yes, definitely.
Holly, stop me if I say something wrong here. I just want to expand on that notion of that drain pipe, because it's a good example of how some of these projects, as we move them forward, A, take time, and B, are part and parcel of flood resilience. So right now, Jay explains this better than I than I ever will, but the main drainage pipe is, Larry, you could speak to this too, but it's essentially inverted, right? The water backs up the drain pipe instead of flows out of it. And this is a function of years of settling and sea level rise on the other end of where the drainage goes out into Moffett Lake. And once we start doing feasibility studies to say, hey, can we put courts here? Can we put a playground here? We realize that we can't do anything until we mitigate that flooding and then understand what we have, what's going to be available to us in terms of dry ground, in terms of ground where whatever we build, we have to plan for it to flood on a regular basis, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a major project. We're fortunate to have funding for it, and it's in progress. And it's going to be a mess for a little bit once they start digging the ditch out there. But just to give you an example of what we're dealing with some of these projects.
They're bull minnows and the storm drains. So that'll put it in perspective. Okay. So the Kellums Trail Connection, this is the third project of the three that has funding from the state as well. So this is also part of the Walkable Communities Advisory Group plan, and it is basically establishing a connection at that northern access point to Kellums. So right now it's you call it a billy goat path, I think is the term.
Yeah, I didn't make that up. That came from our K&K, but it's sort of a common term, a billy goat trail, right? Something that people are using, whether it was designed that way or not. And there's really one on both the east and west end where Holly's arrows are.
Right. So the goal would be to create an actual walkway, and this area definitely would need some light that's not obtrusive to our neighboring property owners, but just to light it for safety reasons. And so this is definitely a nice amount of space that we could do some plantings, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on native plantings and the need for shade trees and things along those lines. So I think this whole entire space, if you've driven back there, just all needs to be addressed. It's very overgrown and, yeah.
It's also used for storage for gravel and all sorts in between projects.
It shouldn't be. I mean, it was with State Highway when they were building the bridge, but it really, occasionally State Highway will ask you to use it, but we try not to do that.
So the arrows are just siding.
Right. So that would be a path with some plantings, lighting, possibly, we could use this area if we felt like we wanted some seating. We really have this whole chunk here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said?
Those are definitely sidewalks. that you
Yes.
wanna put-
Yeah, I would,
So, I was thinking you wanted to put driveways in there. and that was-
Oh,
okay, no, so let me,
Sidewalks you wanna put in.
yes.
yeah,
pedestrian.
not to split hairs though, I wouldn't say sidewalks, and I'm not trying to split hairs at all. So definitely not driving. No, that was not the intent. But I'm thinking something a little more artistic, a little more appealing and bay friendly than concrete sidewalks, but something that clearly says, hey, walk through here. This is how you get to the recreational facilities, et cetera.
That's on the street. Put a trash can in too.
You want trash can?
I pick up trash on that all the time.
Yeah.
Every time they got their thing at the liquor store, I walk there.
Right.
Drunk it or eating it. Trash can probably would have.
We've got a lot of feedback on trash.
Probably not an
recycling.
ice machine though, huh? That'd probably be a bad idea. Put that there. Yeah.
So the parking lot is actually going to stay, it's just the
Yes.
grass.
Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't want to get ahead of anything here, and Greg can interrupt me, but the area there really, there's just such opportunity that we're looking at. So the parking lot, I mean, I would love to see that space used for many other things / simultaneous things, whether there's an ability to put some courts there, to put some recreational facilities there. Of course, water is a big problem in the western corner of that. We'll see what how the drain pipe maybe helps that problem. So we're not talking about getting rid of that, but we'd love to be able to use it for some other things. And that's not really part of today's meeting, but hey, let's be forward thinking, because we don't want walkways to nowhere, right? That's part of what we're trying to do.
So do you envision anything particular there, or?
Of course, we would like to keep it more residential, but also, it would be nice for a sitting area maybe. I really like the area that's down there in North Beach, where they have the fish.
Where they have what? Say it again.
Fish park,
Yeah.
It's a koi pond.
Oh, yeah.
That would be beautiful. That would be really nice. I can go outside and just look at the fish.
That's interesting. That's in all the discussions we've had. No, I don't remember, Greg, maybe this came up, but no one suggested the idea of a garden, like a sunrise garden. That's what they named that park there. Kind of an interesting idea with some water treatment, whatever else. That's a fantastic idea that you should.
Water close by.
Oh, it's a 62. That's something that you get something there right away.
What are you looking for?
Good feedback. Thank you.
I thought it was on 260, but it's not. It's 26th Street.
Okay.
The town's not looking. I thought the town was looking into doing a vehicular access. Up there, to give them some options. Is that not? They're not doing that?
Through here?
No. Yeah, up there. I thought there was some scuttlebutt last year. I think I overheard about it. I think Charlie, you were talking about that too.
I know in the past we have had people try to drive through there and they're not supposed to drive through there.
No, vehicular.
It does not ring a bell. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say no one ever talked about it, but I don't remember it. It doesn't ring a bell. I know there's been discussions about vehicular access here, because there's already vehicular access there with the gate. There's a gate that's there. Again, that's underwater now as much as it's not underwater. But in an emergency, you could get vehicles in and out there.
And I think the concern would be if you opened that up to vehicular access, you would have way too much traffic going through there, trying to avoid the lights and just cutting back through those residential.
There's a lot of people that walk on the street.
Right.
One thing to think about with that there's a lot of people, a lot of vehicles into that area
What area are you talking about, Greg?
where the two condominium buildings are scheduled, well, they're not scheduled.
Oh, I'm off Gordon Stinnett. Yeah.
South on the north side of the creek.
So you gotta mention, you mentioned water, is there a lot of, cause I'm finding water in front of my.
In your basement? Oh, I'm sorry. No.
But outside, by the sewage. Is that a flooded area on that side of 26th Street?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure where you're
No, you
talking
had
about.
said there's water over there where she has
Yeah.
her arrow.
Yeah, we
So-
see what, I mean, I walk through there a lot and I oftentimes can't get through there and I'm pretty intrepid, I will say. And I will go, I'll take one of the Billy Goat trails because I literally would have to wade. And it's hard there too because there's a gate, but it's by the pump station. So there's a gate there. I mean, I think at one time it was a dirt road, but more often than not, you'd wade, under the gate. It would not be pleasant to walk through there.
What's cost water? I mean,
Well, so this is a drainage swale right here that actually runs to the dredge containment area. And so this is collecting really all of the water from these roads, from these homes. It's a slope and it's draining to that point there.
And in fact, the pipe, just Holly, tell me if I get this wrong, but the pipe that we're talking about that we're replacing comes out right here. Right?
Right. It's going to go right. It's going to go right across the field and there. So you can see the water there, how it's draining straight to.
If you go walk around after a rainstorm around the drains that are over here, you can see the problem that we're trying to address with the water.
Yeah, because I was gonna call the sewer department to see if they need to come out. It's smelling now. It's getting worse.
3804.
Yes, sir.
You're here,
Um,
3804.
Yep,
Okay.
It's in
Yeah.
the front yard?
yes, right there in the sewer, the sewer.
But that's stormwater, it's not sewer.
Oh, storm.
Source.
Definitely.
Well, drainage there, but it looks like the grass is nice and green.
And it's so,
It's giving some
it's
extra
red.
nutrients from something.
It smells real bad.
Do you mind leaving your number for me before you leave, and I'll make sure we get a public works ticket in. Okay.
Walk by your house all the time. Yeah.
So that's actually all of the projects, other than just general comments. And I'll definitely make sure to update this form with those changes. I think that makes sense. Thank you.
So when do you think after June 30th, if it's a go, when is the vote supposed to take place?
For the three pocket parks, we have the funding to move forward right away. So, but we would put that out to bid. So we likely would get contractors to bid on the work so we can get them all done, probably likely at around the same time.
Do you have a time frame?
So if we get the feedback June 30th, we would have some concept plans, hopefully by the next month, and then get it out to bid. So late summer, I would think. Yeah.
And all that will be, all that'll be public. So you can follow it with the town email blasts and any work that we bid on will be part of a work session or a meeting. So if you're not on I'm assuming you are, you probably would have found us tonight, but if you want to follow along and continue to have input, the information's all out there.
And we also sent letters to the adjoining. I assume that's how you, okay, good. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to do that. Anything pertinent you need to know.
$50,000 grant spread between the three parks. It's actually just going to work within the confines of the 150,000. It seems pretty easy, but I don't know what committee wanted to decide to put in there that the price would be good for that.
Right.
I'm on board. Just wondering, how they're going to approach assessing the upgrades compared to slim budget.
Right. I think the B Street overlook will have to be phased in. I don't think we'll be able to do all the things we want to do there, or we'll just have to get additional funding from town council to do other items. So I see that one being definitely a larger project that's not going to be complete by this. But I think that the 29th Street Pocket Park and also the Northern Connector Point can absolutely be completed. And then I think we can get a really nice start on B Street. Mhm.
And we have some money. We have to vote to approve it, but we have some money.
So again, the form is on our website.
So Holly, before you wrap up, why don't we swap screens
Sure.
and let me just talk a little bit about the concepts, get some feedback, or give people the opportunity to have feedback on that. And I'm wondering, before I put words in your mouth, if I send you some images, can you add them to that form for people to check a box? I like this one. I like that one. Okay, so we'll do that. So I'm going to share my screen. So
You pick something to share. There we go.
don't tell me how to Zoom. Don't boss me. So we in the Walkability Committee have been trying to create this sort of notion of connectedness. That's been one of our mantras. And one way that we're looking to achieve that is this idea of wayfaring, of sort of creating a sense of place. And we have a couple of signs around town. If anyone's walked around town, there's a couple of, what do you call them, Holly, or Lori, that are already there. It's the Heritage Trail, but they're, say it again.
Heritage Trail signs.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is now. It's the Heritage Trail, and a couple markers, and they have a sort of what was here in 1935, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a good start. But we want to create a sort of a notion of branding that if you're in a spot, if you're in Kellums Field and you see one of these logos or themes, and you look on a map, you can sort of follow your way to these different locations. And we imagine this just filling in over time. And as I said, we've been working with North Beach. They've looked at our designs and provided some input so that they can maintain North Beach branding, but also tie in the connectors. So conceptually, you know, if I ruled the world, you'd be able to walk from Brownies Beach to the Walton Beach Preserve without ever seeing a car or getting hit by one. And that's kind of the idea, is to create this sense of walkability. So in the interest of doing that, or an effort to do that, we've worked to come up with some different signage ideas. And so I'm just going to run through them real quick, and then Holly and I will work to get these in the survey, and people can sort of say, I like these designs, one or the other. To make this simple without going through every variation that we went through, I'm just going to show you a handful that will be on the survey. So we had this notion of square designs, something that might look like this. The Chesapeake Beach logo would be consistent, but perhaps different trail markers. So I could see us easily having 2 to 3 trails. We already have 1 or 2. We have a Heritage Trail. We have the Fishing Creek Trail. Maybe there's a main trail. So there'd be several terms, but they'd be tied in with the same logo and icon. And then we looked at some circular options. I particularly like the train, but that's just me personally. And there was a lot of back and forth among the committee. So in fact, you guys are welcome to speak up with some of the things that you had input on and prefer, et cetera. Because this is not me. This should not be my opinion here. This is what the committee's work. This is another one, sort of these rectangular signs. These were popular because we felt like they could be stacked. They would allow us to use the same signage and possibly stack these on top of each other with chains. So we'd have the ability to grow the network if we start with just a small handful of signs or a small handful of 2 or 3 trails. And then we, add things that these rectangles would allow them to be stacked and not have to put up new signage.
And additionally, that would be if you were in a crossroads place, restaurants this way, or one restaurant this way, another restaurant that way. And that's what the stacking would get you to have more directions.
And the last thing that we had done was, this is new feedback, was ask for a couple of updates. And so this is recently delivered to us. I'm not even sure you guys have seen this yet. because I just got it. And so just a couple of refinements of those ideas. We abandoned the squares. So we had a couple different notions of circular icons. And again, even though these don't have the Chesapeake Beach branding, they have some common icons, right, that follow along. So with the crabs and the font and the red circle that they are consistent with the town, similar with these. And then the stacking ones. So here you have Chesapeake Beach, that you have a specific trail and an icon. And again, these are kind of my favorite, but that's only one person's opinion.
I like that too.
I'll make sure these get on the list, but I'd like people to see all of them, or see as many as we feel are appropriate. So I just share those. I'm open to feedback from the people online or from you guys for sure, but I'm anxious to get feedback from other folks as well. You don't like this boat? This boat looks like it's like it's in distress. Yes, I would agree that boat in itself is probably not quite right.
Frank, did you have a comment?
Before you post these on the website, you may want to correct the spelling on the round ones. The center one has big font at the top and big font at the bottom. And the next one.
Oh, good eye. Yep.
Big font.
Thank you, Frank.
I'll take care of that, Holly. I'll reach out to him.
Greg?
Yeah, I had a comment about.
And you may want to level the boat.
That's
To the sinking or something.
It's jumping waves. It's planing.
I don't think that boat's playing.
After it's up there in the water.
Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
Workload, it won't please.
You had one that was further up on the top, the one with the crab that had the appendages that were reaching out beyond the border of the sign. I think it looked great. If I'm a kid and I'm walking by that, I might want a crab claw for a souvenir.
I think we were looking at different ideas, and I think as much as we like the sign, I think we also decided that from a practical standpoint, they'd be too expensive. So I think this is what's been refined in the final set that we just got. Just checking the spelling on these, Frank. That's it. That's all I have.
Is that a new way of walking or is that?
It's a really narrow.
You mean where is it in town? Well, we don't have it yet, Madeline. We're working on that. Holly, I'm turning it back over to you to do a wrap up. Yeah.
That's really all we have, unless there's any other comments.
I'd like to say one thing. This is great work.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I will shout out again that this is a lot of different committees. Actually, the Kellums work is something that Greg has headed up. Holly and her group are doing a ridiculous amount of work right now, trying to move a lot of the walkability groups ideas forward. And this is only a portion of them that we're working on. These are the only ones that are getting close to ready for public engagement and ready for us to actually build some stuff. But there's lots of other work that we have going on, and some of it is immediate, and a lot of it's far reaching. A lot of it, your kids will use. So stay tuned. But thank you.
The Green team would like to be involved in the choice of plants.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Definitely.
Oh, yes, you're our next stop.
To reach out to you.
That's one I just so not in my expertise that I'm happy to yield that one to whoever knows green from brown.
I thought we just put a bunch of, Japanese barberry bushes.
They can get drowned, that's right. I just read that spirea can stand being flooded up to 6 inches from considerable amount of time, but I don't know about salt water. That's a different setup, isn't it?
Thank you.
And spread the words to your neighbors. Get them interested if you can. The more feedback we get, really, the more the parks will be for the public.
Thank you. Thank you for joining virtually. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Yes.
And I put my address, and that's my phone number. in
Very
there.
good. I'll make sure we get a work order in for
Okay,
you.
thank you, dear. Take
All right.
care,
Thanks
dear.
for coming.
I've been back and forth.
Greg.
A complaint, but it may have been fixed. The trash cans at the bottom of 17th Street, yesterday they were overflowing. So I don't know when pickup day might be. The end of the boardwalk.
Into the boardwalk.
The
Okay.
north end of the boardwalk.
Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Staff